Ladies and gentlemen, Portia Louder.
Well, thank you for giving me the opportunity to connect with you today. My name is Portia Louder, and I grew up in Utah on the outskirts of a small town. And I am the oldest of 7 children. My mother was a hippie, this talented actress and photographer, and my father was a Vietnam vet. And our home was chaotic, no structure, and beautiful. So I remember when I was about 13, that is when I really started to struggle. And my first struggle was with boys. I thought what boys thought of me was the most important thing. And I remember being about 17 years old and finding out that I was pregnant for the first time. I moved out. I moved into a low-income apartment, and I remember thinking, I just need to find the right man. If I just find the right man, everything will work out. So I met a man, and he made this great offer. He was 10 years older than me, and he said, you should marry me because I can take care of you. I said, let's do it. And a month later, we were married in his brother's backyard. And things weren't going great. And about that time, my dad got transferred to Salt Lake for a job, and he moved up with my mom and my other 6 brothers and sisters. So just to give you an idea of my world and how small it was, I had never been out of Richfield. I had never been in the city. I'd never been on an airplane. So I put my son in the car, and we drove up over the point of the mountain, and I saw the city, and I went, wow, I could get a job. Maybe I could have a life, you know? So I went back, and I told my husband, I said, hey, let's move to the city. And he said, I'm never leaving this town, and we don't even get along, so let's just get divorced, and you can head out. So you can see that the commitment was very firm for us. And that's what we did. We filed for a quick divorce, and 30 days later, or actually I think it was a week later, we were divorced. And I moved with my son. He gassed up my car, and I moved to the city. Got a job. My uncle hired me. And then I found out I was pregnant with my daughter. I remember being alone during that time. And after my daughter was born, I went to church with my parents, and I looked around and I thought, everyone's married. That's what I need to do. I just need to get married. It'll all work out. And I wasn't really good at picking the right man. You probably can guess that at this point. So I started dating again, and I got pregnant again. Now this time I was scared, and I'm not sure why. Maybe because I had a job now, but I was scared. And I said my first prayer, which was, God, help me. I don't know what to do. I'm not a great mom to the kids I have. They don't have a father. I need help. And I felt this strength come over me and this warmth. And I knew that this child wasn't mine to keep, that I needed to find his family. I started to look. I met a wonderful couple. They were so supportive of me through my pregnancy, and they adopted my son. They were there the day that he was born, and I watched them hold him for the first time. And I remember them walking out of the room with him, and I felt completely empty inside. And I took that pain and I put it in a box and I set it aside. And then the doctor wrote me a prescription for Percocet. And now I thought, I just need more Percocet. It'll make everything okay. And I continued to use, and things got worse for me. I thought I could just go back to work, but it didn't work. I lost my job. I was gone every night. My parents were raising my children. And I remember coming home late one night, walking into the house, and my little boy was standing by the window crying. He was 8 years old, and my mom was with him. And my mother looked at me and said, Portia, I don't know what it would take for you to change your life, but if this isn't enough for you, nothing ever would be. And that night I took my little boy, and I walked downstairs, and I laid on the floor, and I sobbed. And I begged God, take it from me. I'll do anything. I'll never date again. I'm not good at it. Help me just be a better person for my son. My little boy, who's here today, walked over and he said, Mom, what's wrong? You're beautiful. Why are you so sad? And he pulled me into the bathroom and he goes, look at you, Mom, you're beautiful. And I knew that I would go to any length to change my life. The next morning, I walked across the street, asked a religious counselor that I had never met for help. I said, I'm a drug addict, I need help. I remember him, he did something smart. He called someone that knew more than he did. He's like, I don't know what to do, let me call someone. And a friend came over and took me to my first AA meeting. Here's something cool about going to an AA meeting. There's like genuine happiness in these meetings. It's like amazing, you know, here I am. I'm going outside to have a cigarette every 5 minutes. Like I can't even sit still. And this guy has 2 years clean and he's all lit up. This guy has something I want. So I walk up after, how did you get it? He says, you got to become a good person. I'm like, oh no, what the heck? I don't know how to do that. He hands me this book and he says, this is the path. You've got to learn how to live a principle-centered life. So I started working with this religious counselor and he says to me, Portia, why do you think you did all the things that you did in your life to get here? I said, oh, I know. It was my mother. And he's like, keep thinking about it. You know? And then he said something to me. He said, Portia, you might be the most selfish person I've ever met. First lesson, be grateful for people that are willing to tell you the truth. I was very selfish. He said, keep thinking about it. So I continued to think about it. I called him one day. I called him several times. I think it was my dad. It might be this. It was my ex-husband. Nope. I called him. And he said, did you figure it out yet? He'd say, keep thinking about it. And I said, I think I did. It was because I wanted to. He's like, yes, you got it. Accountability, right? Accountability. So I started to build my life, and it wasn't easy. It was hard. Little simple steps to become a good parent, showing up when I said I would. I remember telling my dad, Dad, I'm so overwhelmed. He said, one day at a time, Portia, read a book to your kids. Read a page of a book to your kids, whatever it takes. One day at a time. That's how you build this new life. Guess what happened? My life got amazing. I wouldn't say amazing. It got pretty good. It got better and better. But it was amazing for me because I knew the difference. I knew the difference. I remember sitting at the zoo with my son going, I'm being a good mom. I'm doing it. I'm being a good mom. It was amazing to me. I met my husband, and I have no idea why my husband would marry me. He's like a good guy, just graduated college. I remember asking Chad, I said, hey, Chad, what scares you the most about me? He said, everything about you scares me, Portia. Rightly so. So we started to build this life together, and I remember being extremely grateful for what we had. I started my own photography company. I was doing the kid thing, and then I had 2 more kids because that's what I do. I get pregnant. So I have 2 more children. My business is growing like crazy, and I relapse. I have a back surgery, and the doctor writes that prescription. And I wasn't honest with him. I didn't tell him, hey, I've got a drug problem. Don't give me those pills, right? And the thing about me is I don't just like to use drugs. I like to hustle when I use drugs. And I think now, I just need to make more money. That'll solve all my problems. So I get involved in these illegal real estate deals. The market's going up. I'm buying houses, pulling cash out of them, flipping them. And I remember the feeling and the weight of that. And the FBI shows up. Terrifying. Nobody wants the FBI to show up. They looked at my husband, and I was standing there with my last child, my 3-month-old baby. And the FBI said to my husband, you're going to need to decide. You're going to need to decide if you're going to stand by her or work with us. Because if you stand by her, you could get wrapped up in a conspiracy. And I saw everything I worked for disappear in a second. Now, this would have been a good time for me to say I made a mistake. How can I make it right? That's not what I did. There's so much power in that second lesson. Making a mistake is one thing. Denying the mistake is a far worse mistake. But I made excuses. It was them. It was the government. It was the banks. I'm not that bad. There's other people that are a lot worse than me, and that's what I did. And things only got worse. And the day came where I walked into a federal courthouse, and I sat there in the front of the room, and I looked back at my husband and my children. How could I have done this? And I knew the judge is going to give me the maximum sentence. And I'm facing 0 to 7 years. 0 to 7 years. I stand up. I'm so sorry. The United States of America versus Portia Louder. It's a scary feeling. They're like, I don't think I have a chance here. The judge sentenced me to 84 months in federal prison. And I turned around and I watched my husband stand, compose himself, and plead with the judge on my behalf. Please give her time to say goodbye to her children. The judge gave me 8 weeks. I walked out of that courthouse, and my life has never been the same. I remember on the drive home wondering, how could I have been such a fool? How could I have traded everything important for nothing? Money? Are you kidding me? I went home and I watched my children sleep. I drove my son to school. I wondered how I could have missed the beauty of my life. And then my husband drove me to Dublin, California, because there aren't federal prisons in Utah. The morning that I drove away, my mother came to get my kids, and she turned away because it was too painful to watch her daughter say goodbye to her children. My husband drove me to Dublin, California, and I walked into a prison with 1,000 women. And nobody said welcome. Nobody was excited to see me. Everybody was wearing khaki. I was devastated. After 3 days of sitting in a cell, so brokenhearted, all I could see was my children's faces. I got on my knees and I said this, God, I feel like nobody to anybody. I have hurt everybody I love. I have failed everybody. I can't see my way out of this hole. Please help me know who I am. And I felt the most incredible amount of love I've ever felt in my life. I felt the most incredible amount of connection to everything on this earth. And I could see that I have an important purpose in my weakest state. And I could see how valuable I am and how valuable we all are. And then I knew I never needed a man. It wasn't easy. I'm not going to say that it was easy. It was hard. 4.5 years I was away from my family. I spent a year in Dublin, California, and then I went to Minnesota. I got transferred there. I remember that when my kids came out to see me, my husband and my kids, because I left them in pretty bad shape financially, so they couldn't come often. It had been a year. I left my kids. My younger kids were 7, 12, and 14. When they walked in, it had been a year since I had seen them in Minnesota, and they were 6 inches taller, teenagers, and they were hurting, and it was my fault. I remember my son Jackson. He was angry. He had a chip on his shoulder, and my daughter just looked at me and she said, Mom, I don't believe anything you say anymore. I'm so tired of this. It broke my heart, and I knew my kids need to know this was me. I need to be so brave. If my kids grew up thinking that the government did me dirty, this was my fault. So I decided to make a list of everything I had done to hurt anybody, and it was a spreadsheet. And I took some girls down to the rec yard, and I said it out loud, everything. I said, I'm going home free, and I buried the list. Guess what happened? My soul opened up. I started to connect with people and hear their stories. I started imagining a new future for myself. It wasn't easy. My kids had a right to be angry. They were hurt. But one step at a time, I was able to reconnect and build relationships. And that's still happening. By the end of my sentence, my life was beautiful. No cell phones in prison. Genuine connection. I remember sitting outside when the sun was going down and we're dancing and laughing and having fun. And I'm thinking, this might be the most beautiful moment of my life. And then the day came where they called my name, louder. And I walked out of that prison. And the only thing I had was a box, cardboard box. Everything important was in my heart. I had so much love for these women. And when I walked out, my husband was waiting for me with flowers. And all the women came running out cheering. "We love you, Miss Louder. We love you, Portia." What an adventure. I was free. I had owned my part. So I want to share some of the beauty of my life. When I got home, my son that I gave up for adoption reached out and he wanted to get to know me. He's here today filming me. Such a beautiful part of my life. I opened that box and it was beautiful. My children are here. How I love them. How proud I am. My mother is here. There's so much beauty in my life. I wrote a book. My heart was so full. I started working with women in drug treatment and I couldn't hold it in. And I just wrote the book and I published it and I sent it in to these women and they were, "Portia, it's our story." It was amazing. Be grateful for people that tell you the truth. When you make a mistake, own that mistake and look for the beauty. I want to tell you another story of beauty. A month ago, my brother took his life. And you may wonder, how could that be beautiful? My brother is a warrior. He was diagnosed bipolar in his teenage years, and I fought alongside him. And so did my mother, and so did my siblings. We fought with him. And the day that he took his life, I was the one to go talk to the doctors. I walked back at the hospital, and the doctor said, I said, "Can we do organ donation?" "I don't think so." And something inside me said, "You don't know my brother." So I turned around to walk away to go see my parents. And a social worker came running back and she said, "He's fighting." I said, "Please, if we can just donate his organs," and everything. We donated everything. And I stood in the room with my parents, and it was sacred, and it was beautiful. And I watched my mother rub my brother's feet, this boy that she loved so deeply. And I watched my father stand next to his son and say, "Oh, my son, how I love you. I was here the day you were born, and I am here with you now. I'm proud of you, Nick. It's time for you to go now. It's okay. I love you." I am so grateful for this opportunity to share some of the beauty of my life, and that includes pain. Thank you.